I never have been fearful of taking a risk. I just learned that you had to fight and you had to be resilient. Don't quit. We scaled really fast. We went from about 20 employees to 100 employees in probably 3 months.
Just because you're a successful business person in one area doesn't mean you can jump to a whole different. What you define success as. Has your definition of success changed with the company growth?
When I look at business, it's not for everybody. Number one, you've got to be resilient. Shit's going to hit the fan. You've got to be able to figure out how to navigate through that.
A lot of entrepreneurs, I think, get into it and then they realize that because they wanted freedom, but they realize that they still have a job. The job is running their business. All right, well, sitting down with a longtime friend. I don't even 20 some years, right?
Yeah.
But hanging out with David Kaiser. We'll get into business later, into Global CTI, your company and that. But going back and starting, going back to what was your childhood dreams or aspirations? The classic, when I grow up, I'm going to be, when you were a kid, what was that?
Yeah, well, I grew up on a farm here in Bakersfield. So I think for the, most of my growing up years, I wanted to be a farmer.
Right.
That was my dream. And my dad kind of pushed me to, go to school, go to college, and major in, learn about technology. So
okay.
He kind of pushed me down that road, but I still wanted to be a farmer. Even when I got married in 1991,
right.
and I had just before that graduated with my bachelor's degree. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science, and it was my dad who kind of I was working on the farm. A family farm can only support so many people, and he said, "Hey, you need to go get a job, take advantage of your."
So you had the opposite of telling him, "Hey, I want to go do this," and your parents were like, "I don't know that that's possible." You had the opposite where you're like, "No, I'm going to stay here," and they're like, "No,
yeah, go do something," and that was kind of the pivot point,
right,
for me.
So even after college, you still were thinking, I'm going back.
Yeah. And there's always that romantic side of it. But it was probably the best move for me.
Cool. Well, what core values did you learn out on the farm that you still carry with you?
Yeah. Well, for sure, hard work.
Yeah. Farm was that?
Yeah, we worked, you were expected to work out there, and so I started working when I was just a little guy, and I by the time I was 10 or 11, I was driving a tractor, and I can't imagine my kids had doing that, or but we did, and it wasn't a big deal. So hard work, of course, doing what being carrying through on your promises. So you say you're going to do something, do it.
The old man of your word, right?
Man of your word, handshake deals. My dad, he didn't have contracts. If he sold a load of hay to somebody, he shook his hand and the guy paid him a couple of weeks later. And, that humility for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, probably something that really helped me in business that, all those things helped me, but just a resiliency. You don't give up. You keep fighting. Farming is not easy.
No, because you're at the whim of nature and everything else, right?
Yep. So we were, I just learned that you had to fight and you had to be resilient. Don't quit.
Right.
So,
and knowing that sometimes things outside of your control, you have to overcome, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the farming world.
Farming, half the things you don't control, maybe most of the things you don't control.
Exactly.
The markets, the weather.
Do what you can do. But if for whatever reason it's a bad year or it's a good year and everybody produces too much, then you learn about economics early, right? Too much supply.
Yep, for sure.
Prices drop. We
had a lot of too much supply.
Well, what about like any like childhood concerns or fears that were like that either, affect your ambitions or things that you're like, can I do this?
Yeah, I don't. So I never have been fearful of taking a risk,
Right.
And maybe I got that from growing up out there. I'm not sure, but the one thing that I think kind of was a negative is just a little too much of a fear of failure,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there is a healthy component to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you are more worried about what other people are going to think about you,
right,
when you fail, then you're worried about it for the wrong reasons.
Right. Which is interesting because knowing your story, right? So you come from the farm and you end up going to BHS and playing quarterback at BHS, right? So that
Yeah,
little cultural shift of
I went from a little tiny school
right
out in the country to Bakersfield High. Played football. I love playing football. That was kind of a family thing that we all did together, my cousins and my siblings. And I was always, the king of the pack, right, until I got to BHS.
That's a humbling experience.
That was a humbling experience. All of a sudden I was this little puny kid that wasn't very big and not very good, to be honest with you. And I had to learn. I had to fight. I think that was part of that whole being resilient,
right,
sticking up, don't quit. And I eventually, grew a little bit and became a pretty good football player. Not a great, but a good high school football player.
Yeah, I was in that ballpark. But and you still have friends from those.
And what you learn in football, some of the greatest, my coach, Paul Briggs, he was an asshole. But some of the values that he talked about, setting goals,
right,
being a part of the team, looking out for the guy working next to you. There was just some lessons that I took from that I probably learned more from football than any class in
right,
high school.
Yeah, from that level. And
yeah.
And also at that time, was BHS successful? So was there that expectation of?
Yeah, we had a tradition.
Yeah.
And we had some good teams. We had some not so good teams.
Right.
But there was always an expectation that we were going to be one of the better teams.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you still have good friends from those.
Oh yeah.
Years,
I mean,
right?
You played football.
Yeah.
Those guys are,
they're
brotherhood.
Right?
If I see somebody that I played football with in high school, it's like a long lost brother.
Yeah, exactly.
I see those guys on Facebook and it just, they kind of warm your heart a little bit. You love those guys.
Right. So you went in there, and we all have to overcome obstacles as we're going through life, right? And so when you were hit the kind of the wall of, what do I quit football or do I just start working on it? Or
yeah,
you went the work route, right? Like, okay.
Yeah. When I went to college, I tried to play football in college a little bit, and I wound up. That's when I made a decision that I've got to. I'm not going to be a professional football player. I'm not good enough.
Yeah, realization.
And that's, but I would say that what really made me grow up was getting married.
Right.
That's when then the shit hit the fan that, you just can't be worried about yourself.
Right.
And that's kind of when I really started to grow. I mean, I was slowly getting there. That kind of jolted me all the way into gear. But anyway, and then having kids, of course.
Right. Yeah.
Each one of those inflection points kind of, straightens you up a little bit more.
Right.
And some people, you take on that responsibility and it means something to you. And
right.
And that was kind of me.
Yeah. And realizing as you're doing that there's times where you don't know what to do. Right. But you still got to figure it out. Like, okay.
There's still times.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would say that there were, that was one thing about growing up out there is we were pretty sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that, if you were looking at a scale of worldly knowledge,
Right.
On a scale from 1 to 100, I was probably at a 40 when I was in high school. And, which really made it tough for me at the beginning of high school. And maybe having believing the wrong things, or believing being cool, like most kids, right? You want to be cool and you want to be popular, and realizing that that's not really the thing you should be worried about.
Right.
But I was, but I've always struggled with that. And it took me a while in high school to figure that out. But even when I was 20 years old, I was still a nerd when it came to some, having a knowledge of what's going on around me socially a little bit.
So going through high school and even college, you were like, no, still focused on the farms. And so we all go through our inner battle, right? There's all of our inner battles with ourselves, like self-doubt, fear of failure, some imposter syndromes. Mm-hmm. So when was times that you felt any of those? Like,
yeah, I think that definitely the fear of failure is probably the one that stands out to me. And that really kicked in when I started my business. Right. And as you know, starting business is not easy.
Right.
And getting, that capitalizing that business and trying to, you worry about it all the time. And and that fear of failure kind of has followed me throughout my life. Even when I played, sports in high school, I didn't want to disappoint my dad or my mom, or my family or my cousins,
right.
Because that was an important thing to them. So I stuck with it until I could have a little bit of success.
Right.
So fear of failure to me, and I got to be honest with you, it wasn't until now I don't give a crap what people think.
Right.
If I fail.
Right.
But I would say that I dealt with that until I was well into my 40s.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Well, because when you do go out that, so your dad's saying, hey, go do something else. But when you make that leap into entrepreneurship and owning your own business, was there any pushback or like, this isn't a good idea? What if this fails?
Yeah, I didn't. So, well, when my dad pushed me kind of off the farm to go take advantage of my education, I went to work for a privately owned oil company here in Bakersfield, and I excelled. I was really good at my job, and it gave me a lot of confidence. I was very confident in the work that I did.
Right, your abilities.
Yeah. And but it was kind of starting the business to help make extra money. I was kind of moonlighting.
Oh, okay.
Kind of how it started.
So more like a side hustle.
Yeah. And then it took off. I was making more money doing that. So the owner of the refinery basically bankrolled me to start this business.
So you did have that good support.
But it wasn't until we started losing money that I started worried about failing. So during that first 4 years, first 3-4 years, trying to get that, that business off the ground, David Kaiser made some mistakes, in what we were doing and hiring folks. And then it became the fear started coming in, the fear of screwing my family, because I put everything into it.
Right. So you got everything into it and had an investor.
And I had an investor who I cared about.
Right.
Who was good to me.
Right. So it's not like, hey, this guy took a shot on me, and if I lose this money, I've let my family down and
let all these people down.
Right.
I look like I'm a failure. So that was when it really manifested itself for me.
Right. Those are those long nights, right? Yeah. Geez, what did I do?
Okay, how am I going to make payroll this next week?
Exactly. I've had a few of those myself. Like, oh, geez, what's going to happen here? So now you were always good at taking risks, right? But now how do you navigate when a decision comes in the business?
Yeah, I try to take a little more time to make decisions now.
Okay.
Not just impulsive decisions, and have a little more patience. And I'm not a very patient person,
right?
Anyway, but I have done a better job of, not just spouting off orders because that's what is at the top of my head right now.
So it's almost that becoming more aware that when you make a decision, there's going to be consequences.
Yep.
Some of them are unseen. I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things. And I was the same way when I first got started. I was like, all right, let's make a quick decision. Let's go. And not realizing the wake it would cause to my employees and to people buying, like, what? He's taking a right now all of a sudden, and we don't know where he's going. And
yep.
It's like, oh, it'll work out. Let's just go.
And it's not that I don't do some of that stuff sometimes, and sometimes I do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I want to throw a little monkey wrench into
shake it up.
Yeah. But yeah, it's important to, I think it's important to think about especially on important business, even personal, things. Yeah. You should probably maybe sleep on it, or it's like emails. You get an email that just pisses you off.
Right.
Some little asshole sends you, something that your first thing is, I'm going to fire off and I'm going to I'm going to give it to this guy. And sometimes if you just sleep on it and then you reread it the next morning, you read it differently, and then you respond differently.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I've gotten better at.
Right. So you had some foresight because you'd started this Global as like a side deal. So did you see it kind of as it was growing, and you had a little foresight that, hey, this could be something?
Yeah, there definitely was a demand for the skills that I had.
Right. Putting it together, right? Yeah. And so you're building it. When was the turning point in the company where you're like, oh, this could really be something?
Yeah, I think of course, at the beginning, I thought it could really be something.
Right.
And we had an opportunity to go expand. We bought, when I got that money infusion, we were able to go buy some companies.
Okay.
And we bought a company in Bakersfield, one in LA and one in Orange County. But we kind of moved from, my background was in data, and all of these companies were voice providers.
Right.
And my vision was, voice and data is integrating because of IP. And this is in, the year 2000, 1999.
So you saw that early.
We saw that coming. It was, it was happening. And so we bought these companies, and of course I saw nothing but opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So we dumped a bunch of money into it. But the problem is, it's, if we didn't properly capitalize it, right. There's an investment that has to be made to go buy the business.
Right.
And then you got to have capital to keep the company running until you've got it cash flow positive.
Right.
So we struggled there for a few years in dealing with that.
That's some pretty quick scaling too, to go into.
Oh yeah, we scaled really fast.
So all of a sudden you go from a few employees to.
We went from about 20 employees to 100 employees in probably 3 months.
That's some. That's meteoric scale.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So that had to lead to some like, oh my God, what do we do?
And then you've got all these, this, your business has its own culture.
Right.
And every business has its own culture.
Right.
So we took 4 different cultures basically and tried to mold them together.
Right.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It took us a little while to kind of straighten it out.
So you go grow quick, then you hit the rough patch of doing that, like how do you put these companies together? How do I make this? So when in that, then is it like, oh, now we've got it figured out? Was that the turning point where it's like,
yeah, I started, so what really helped me figure it out is I took my, I had 3 core guys that were my, kind of my leaders.
Right.
And I sat them down and I said, look, guys, we need to figure out what our values are.
Oh, okay.
Because,
I feel like we've got a whole bunch of different, we're kind of scattered out as a business here in how we do business. And I think that was probably the best meeting I ever had with these guys.
So it's just that getting the minds together so that that everybody knows that,
We kind of said, hey, let's take our best employees and what do they bring to the table?
Okay.
And that's our core values are pride, a willingness to sweep floors, and simple, not flashy. In that meeting, we came up with those, and we met all day. It was a 2-day deal,
right?
And we kind of looked at the values that these key people kind of had. So then, from that point forward, when we hired people, we tried to hire people who fit. And just because you don't fit our values doesn't mean you're bad,
right?
Just means you don't fit with us,
right? Yeah, you're not. It's back to the sports thing, right?
Yeah.
You might be able to play on a team. It's just not this team.
Yeah,
because it just
we're a blue collar company,
right?
And I'm a blue collar guy that grew up on a farm that's pretty simple minded, and I like those kind of people around me.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard workers. You want to be smart and analytical, but
right.
But you want to have some humility, and you want
not the know-it-alls, not the
And you see a dirty cup on the floor, pick it up and throw it in the trash.
Yeah, don't wait for the cleaning crew to come get it. Right.
Yeah, and I don't need a prima donna working for me. I don't. You go work for somebody else.
So because we all have that inner compass, right? That keeps guiding us to where we're going. And it sounds like yours was created on the farm, right? That still like the handshake and the don't need to brag, humble kind of lead, right? So what do you do to maintain that as the companies become successful, as you start getting known? Like, how do you stay grounded and balanced?
Yeah, I think we for sure talk about those values. And in fact, I just had an all-staff call this morning, and our people are spread all over we got people in Texas.
Yeah, you got people everywhere.
Everywhere. So, we had a Teams call this morning, and we do these pretty regularly, and we always close out by reciting our values and our mission.
Oh, cool. So you really drive it down.
Yeah.
It's not like, because I know that's one of the things looking at business growth, as you start getting that big, that's one of the threats of a company as it grows is you lose that culture and that character that was originally started in.
And I have noticed, those core values are there and would probably always be there. Mm-hmm. But as you grow, you shift a little bit. Right. You can't be, for lack of a better term, podunk forever. You've got to build process in. You've got to build controls in.
Yeah.
So it can't just all be good old boy, work hard, go. You got to think too.
Yeah, you got to build that infrastructure, right, and grow it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that's another hard piece, and that's why scaling that fast is like, oh my gosh, how do we have these set up, and what processes do we have for payroll, and was all that ready to amp up, or was that part?
Yeah. So we outsourced most of that stuff.
Okay.
And we still do outsource the payroll piece.
Right.
We do HR in house, but the payroll piece is outsourced through a company called ADP. So, and that's just because I've had some bad experiences. Not, if you don't pay your payroll taxes, if you don't pay your sales taxes, it doesn't matter if you've made an honest mistake.
Right.
You're going to pay.
Right. And then pay more.
Yeah.
And pay more. You got to pay it, but there's penalties and interest.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to make sure you take care of those. You cross those T's and dot those I's.
There's some pieces of business that are vitally important.
Yeah.
That's one of them, right? So now, since I know your story, but what do you do for like balance? Because I know your daughter's married, you travel and see, and your son's down in Orange County somewhere, right? Yeah, they're both down there in Orange County. Yeah, of course, as much time as we can spend with them as we can. My wife and I, we were down there yesterday. Oh, cool.
So, kids, right now we have a big project going on at our house, redoing a bunch of things. So that's been quite a thing. That'll keep you humble too. Yeah. Not having a kitchen, not having. So we got that going on. Look, I'll go out and play golf every once in a while.
Right.
And I love to smoke cigars, as you know.
I know. And good ones at that. That's why it's cool hanging out with you.
So and I'm a big Dodger fan.
Yeah.
So I'll sit on my patio, have a cigar, and watch Dodger games in the summertime.
You caught the playoff game the other day.
I was there. Yeah.
So, all right. So then, as you've gotten, so compared to coming out of college and what you define success as, has your definition of success changed with the company growth?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's always been a financial component to it, and there still is.
Right.
It's funny because when you start having some financial success, it becomes less important.
Right.
I just wonder if we had not had financial success, if it would not be important or as important, right? Yeah. So if you're always striving for it, but I would say, for me, peace is a big thing. Right. Peace of mind, peace, not worrying about stuff as much. Mm-hmm. But I think that the financial success helps with that. You worry less. Money doesn't make everything, but money makes things easier.
Right.
So if you have a little success, but my, I just, I just want my kids to have happy, productive lives, mm-hmm. be self-sufficient.
Right.
And if that to me is the main thing. And if I can have a good core group of friends, which I do,
right,
as you know,
yeah,
and have some decent health. To me, I'm pretty simple.
So you hit that realization, right? Of, hey, this isn't about money, right? And Mo and I were talking about this earlier. Like, when I look at like the monthly expenses of Terrio therapy, I couldn't have even fathomed that number.
Yep.
And now it's just, the numbers just change, but they're still just numbers, right? As it's getting bigger and bigger, it's like, yeah, we spend this much money. Hopefully we bring in a little more. the real joy of business, right?
Yep.
So it's just but when that realization switches where it's like, all right.
So, it's all relative.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in college, I have a friend in college, and I won't mention his name, but he runs a big IT department in Kern County. Mm-hmm. And we were computer science majors together, and we were talking one day about our dreams. And both of us said, well, if we could just make $50,000 a year, we would be set for life.
All we need, right? Yeah.
And that was probably in 1988, 89.
Right. Which seemed like a lot of money.
Seemed like a lot of money, but everything's relative.
Yeah, everything.
And I remember I had a buddy who was in that picture with me from that game. He's a high school buddy of mine. And he went to West Point, and he came back and told me, hey man, when I get out of college, I'm going to make $100,000 a year when I get out of the military. And I said, there's no way you'll ever make $100,000 a year. That's just impossible.
Out of the realm of, yeah.
And that's part of that, because part of achieving is believing you can do something.
Right.
You got a dream.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It's it's all relative.
Yeah. It just changes. Like, okay, so what's next? It's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. But you still have those friendships from the years, high school and stuff, and now our friends. But what was how do you measure success? How do you measure it personally? Like, when you think about the success of your kids, and those are a couple of them, but how do you look back and go, like, if somebody's like, what's success to you now?
Yeah,
or how do you measure it? Like, because I think a lot of people have the perception when they see business people that we only look at the dollars, right?
Yeah, it's not just money. Like I said, money helps.
Oh yeah,
but I felt this way for a long time. Global is a pretty good sized business now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel personally responsible for the lives. Our mission is to help our employees and our customers be as successful as they can be.
Right.
That's my definition of success.
Right.
So I got into business to help my family be better.
Right.
And my definition, and whatever that is,
right.
however they define success, and I guess it can change throughout your life depending on what comes about.
I think that's just it, right? Like you get to the point where now you have employees that make more than 100,000. Right?
Oh yeah.
Like, so it's like,
yeah.
So
several.
Where you go back to your friend telling you, I'm going to make $100,000 some year, to the fact that you have several employees that are way past that. It's like, does that ever cross your mind? Like, how weird is that? Like at one point I thought,
I don't think about it a lot, but it's like I said, it's all, you get so caught up in the minutia of the day to day that you sometimes you don't step back to see the forest through the trees.
Yeah. And so do you have those times where you're smoking a cigar or hanging out like with your kids down in Orange County where it's just like, wow.
Yeah. I've come a long way.
According to your wife, you still got some work to do.
Yeah. But yeah, she keeps me humble.
So if you were to go back to you going into college, right, what advice would you give yourself to go back to that 18, 19-year-old self to go, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I would, don't worry about what other people think about you.
Right.
And just soak all of that up. I mean, there'll never be another time in your life,
right,
from the time you're, well, any time, but from the time you're 15 or 16 to the time you're 22 or so,
right,
those are formative years,
right,
that if you take advantage of them properly, can make a big difference and make your life a lot easier later on.
Yeah. No, I think so, right? If you can get out of, I think that's the hardest thing at that age is to get out of your own head.
I think 90% of us probably, if we went back, would say the same thing.
Right.
There's very few people who fully took advantage of their high school years and working a little harder,
mm-hmm,
being a little more, committed to what they should have been committed to, and even in college. And it's okay to have fun.
Oh yeah. Still okay. We're just older and it ends earlier.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's what I would say. I definitely would have buckled down a little bit more, when I went back and got my master's degree after I got married, and the difference between my focus doing that versus undergraduate or high school were just not, if I would have had that kind of focus.
Right. And learn that stuff early, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the things that, switched for me in college was when I went into athletic training and physical therapy. It was like, you stop. I mean, before the general ed and stuff was just, I needed to know enough just to pass this class, right? So but I never applied it. But when all of a sudden you can take that knowledge you're learning and apply it, then that's, I think, the gold.
Yeah. Now I just love to learn.
Yeah.
I wish I had that feeling back then, and whatever, art, history, and back then you have the time to really learn it.
Right. Yeah. I think I've read way more books since I went into business than I would have ever. And back when I'm in high school and, it's grade school, high school, college, when you're supposed to be reading them and you're not. Now it's like, man,
I had to throw. Well, the interesting thing, and one of the things my wife did really good with our kids is she read to them all the time. We, and she had me read to them quite a bit. And we've probably given away more books than I ever picked up in my life, from the time till the time I was 20 years old. I mean, they just read, and they were early readers, and such a good thing to do. And that really got me more into reading.
Right.
And as we were doing this project in our house, I've thrown away boxes of books. I've never read like that when I was, college or a kid.
You started looking at
Cliff Note guy.
Yeah, me too. Thank God for Cliff Notes getting me through high school. Did you read this book? Well, kind of. I read the first few pages of Cliff Notes, and
I got the gist of it.
Exactly. Just don't ask me to do a report. So, what do you see now, like going forward? The company, let's do the company first. Like, what do you foresee with Global? Are you like, we're good, let's stay here, or continue to look for the next?
Yeah, there's so much opportunity. So we were, like I said, my background was in data. Then we bought these companies that provided voice services, and for the first, 14 years or so, that's what we focused on. We were 95% plus just voice.
Mm-hmm.
And about 8 years ago, I decided we needed to diversify a little bit.
Right.
So we have created a life, we call it life safety solution,
right,
which, includes mass notification and video surveillance, camera stuff, access control door locks. That division of our business has just skyrocketed, gone crazy, and all the infrastructure stuff to build that out. And then we also, at the same time, hired a couple of data guys, and I kind of went back to my roots and built out a managed services division.
Oh, cool.
And that division is going crazy now. And we kind of have a specialized size customer. We have really pinpointed who our targets are for those.
Right.
So there's a lot of opportunity.
You do a lot of work with school districts.
A lot of work with school districts.
And that's part of that alert, right?
The whole life safety stuff is 90% of that is at K-12 and community colleges. Right. So, kindergarten through high school and community colleges.
And was that just an opportunity based on what was happening in schools? And
yeah, we had the interesting thing on that is we had a community college customer in Southern California who we, put in a phone system for them. We managed it.
Right.
And they had somebody that, this is probably 8 or 9 years ago, they had somebody walk on campus with a gun. And they had an emergency notification system that they alerted, and it was what we call secondary notification. So they sent out this notice. It goes to everybody's cell phones,
right,
saying, "Hey, you got a
potential threat.
Yeah, there's this threat. There's a lockdown." And fortunately, nobody got hurt. The guy got escorted off campus by the police, I believe.
Right.
But afterward, they did an assessment, and only, I think, less than 30% of the intended targets got the message.
Oh, geez.
People in classrooms weren't getting it. People walking around school weren't getting it. So you could be walking around, you're walking right into somebody potentially shooting a gun. So they came to us and said, "Hey, can you help us figure out a way so that if we have a lockdown, people can't ignore it?" So we we really boned up on this topic.
Right.
And, now we're pretty, I would say we're experts in how to do this stuff. But at that time, we helped develop a product for this school that, okay, they have a phone in their classroom. If a teacher sees something, they can press a button and it sends out an alert to everybody, and they can't ignore it because it's coming out over the speakers in the PA system. Right. It also goes to their cell phones. So anything with audio or visual, the message will pop up or, sound out.
So you put redundancy in the system. It's not a single point of failure, right?
Yeah. And you can initiate it in many different ways, right? From your phone, from your cell phone, right, from a panic button.
Right.
So we developed that. That's how that product, we called it Activate. And that's how that solution kind of got started.
But that's the epitome of business that I think people forget, right? It's problem, when somebody has a problem and you can come up with a solution for that problem,
Yep.
especially if nobody else has a good solution, then did you know that it was going to blow up and go to so many different schools?
We had a, unfortunately, and this is sad, but you just watch your nightly news.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's plenty of marketing for you. Right?
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately.
Unearned media all over the place.
Yeah,
Which is really sad, but there's definitely a need. But, we've got a large community college district on the coast. They've got about 50,000 students, 4 campuses, and they have this solution. They're one of our customers that have the solution. And the most use that they get out of the solution is for medical emergencies. Because they got these huge campuses. Somebody has a heart attack or somebody faints.
Oh, yeah.
And they use this system and it pinpoints where that person is so that the first responders. So if you press the button, the way our system works now is it notifies the school, but it also notifies first responders, 911, E911.
Oh, okay.
And then,
so it doesn't rely on somebody from the school to make that.
Yeah, if that's how they want to set it up.
Okay.
Right.
They have
so the first responders get the message and it gives them the pinpoint of where that person is, where that alarm was pressed.
Instead of pulling up in the front
and asking
admin and being like, hey, where's...
It's in building 232, second floor, classroom 119.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's pretty cool stuff.
So what was the move into data then? Or back to data? Because that's full circle for you, right? You start in data, you end up doing phones, then activate, but now you've looped back to data. So what was the drive to get back to data?
Yeah, I think for that one, it was just, hey, I want to go back to my roots. I know there's opportunity in this space. There are a whole bunch of these MSPs around that serve small businesses, which is fine. Right. But we kind of wanted to go after a little bit, the 50 to 200 user,
bigger,
little bit bigger customers.
Right.
And it's not it's not as price sensitive because it's more about the solution.
Right.
And we have a really, really strong cybersecurity stack. And to me, that's where
everything. Talk about unintended marketing. Right?
Yeah.
Every day you're hearing about.
So we built out extremely, where we have a security operations center that's 24/7, 365. So anytime something happens on the computer, our system is alerting the SOC, and the SOC is on it now. So it could be Christmas Day.
So any
kind of bad stuff.
Yeah. And it seems like there's no shortage of
it. Yeah.
Somebody recently was telling me that they got the ransomware thing and made the mistake. They paid it, but now it's just going to be a target if you don't fix it.
Yeah, that way you got to fix it. But typically, it's getting harder and harder to get cyber insurance because they're forcing people to put all of these controls in place to limit to kind of reduce the liability that's sitting out there for them.
Right.
Because they used to just write these policies and then everybody started having to pay ransoms.
Yeah, when all of a sudden the bills start to increase. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that side of the equation. That the insurance guys would be like, wait a minute, we're not going to continue paying if you guys aren't going to set up what you need.
Yeah, you got to put these controls in place or these safeguards in place, or we're not going to cover you.
Right. So then you're sitting duck.
Yep. Yeah, and it's scary. Even if you have all this stuff in place, usually it's a user that opens the gate.
Right. Yeah.
For someone to get in.
We get that
unintended.
Yeah, we still get that. I mean, Terrio therapy. I'll see emails from Ken. Hey, if you see,
don't open that.
I'm not asking for gift cards, or I'm not asking, and Tim isn't either. So,
well, we had a deal where I didn't get the email, but I got a request from HR saying, hey, this person needs their direct deposit changed.
Oh.
And I'm included on this email, right?
Right.
And I look at it, it's from one of our employees.
Right.
And I have a meeting with HR. The person from HR tells me, hey, it was a scam. and we almost changed the banking information.
Oh, geez.
Until she called the employee to say, "Hey, I didn't get this information. Can you tell me?" He said, "I didn't send in a change for a request to change my direct deposit." And then she went back and looked at the email, and it was from him, but there was one letter off.
Oh, so somebody had cloned it. Oh, geez. It's a scary world out there, man. So what else is in your plan? Like, now that you're reaching this level, right? What are you going to do outside of the company? Is it travel? Is it?
Yeah, I probably, so I've got a couple of other little business ventures I'm thinking about.
Okay.
Putting my toe into.
Right.
But my main goal is to grow global.
Okay. So you're just focused on.
I figure I got about 10 years left.
Right.
That I want to
ramp this thing.
Yeah, up. I want to go hard.
Right.
And I think the way it looks right now is my son, who works in the business, would eventually like to, keep it in the family.
Right. Do that,
so to speak. Do a transition. But I have some goals on kind of we've got a pretty good product portfolio right now.
Right.
And I think an opportunity to grow it. We have some cash, so we're going to, we're going to try to get as much business share as we can. And, we're all over the state of California now.
Right.
We're going to try to increase that business share. And then we've got some geo targets that we're looking at outside of the state.
Well, and I think that's the decision people make, right? Like you'll hear, or I hear, like somebody gets a moderately successful business, and then instead of doing that, instead of growing or looking at the one-offs, they're like, oh, I'm going to jump way over here, because if I did it in whatever business, I think I want to run a restaurant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, well, first of all, success in this area doesn't mean, just because you're a successful business person in one area doesn't mean you can jump to a whole different.
Yeah, I always say, if you look at a dartboard and you look at all these different, and you can do this for your products, or you can do this for the businesses that you invest in. But where you're successful is, that's the bullseye, and the further away you get from that bullseye, the more risk.
Right. Exactly. That's a great
of analogy. Success.
All of a sudden, you're throwing at somebody else's dart. Well, I'll be that, but hey, I've got my dartboard, and I'm going to start throwing at this one over here.
Yeah. Like, good luck.
That's a bad angle.
Yeah.
So I love that analogy. Well, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming doing this, and it's always funny. Like when Morgan came on, you and Vip, like people I really know. It's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But sometimes you learn stuff you didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, I didn't realize that about your story, and I just think there's something about the stories, right? Hopefully, it helps people see what business is really like.
Yeah, when I look at business, it's not for everybody to start your own business,
right? Because
you've got to be able to. Number one, you've got to be resilient.
Yeah, you got to roll with the punches, right? Because they're going to come.
Shit's going to hit the fan,
right? Exactly.
At some point, and it will continue to hit the fan, and you've got to be able to figure out how to navigate through that,
right?
And compartmentalize things, and it's really hard. Versus, I had a job when I first got out of college. Right. That was easy. Right. I just went to work. All that stuff fell on somebody else. And there's nothing wrong if that's what your outlook is. You don't want to have that. You've got other things you want to. You don't want to go to bed worrying about payroll, right. And I don't blame you.
Right. And I think that's part of, like, I've been working on this entrepreneur program from startup through scaling, and the more I look at it, the more I'm like, if you really knew all the components of a business, right? It's usually a lot of businesses start because you're good at something, then you decide to start it.
Yeah.
Then you start finding out about competition, trying to find customers, how hard it is in this day and age to get people's attention.
Yep.
Nice.
managing employees,
managing contracts, managing, the finance piece.
Yeah. And you learn that the thing that you really love to do is not what you're going to end up doing.
Right. And at some point, I think there's nothing wrong with just, hey, I just want to have a job because I don't want to deal with all that. But a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, get into it and then they realize that because they wanted freedom, but they realize that they still have a job. The job is running their business.
Yeah.
So until you reach a certain level of success, you're not going to have that freedom.
You're always going to have a master.
Right. Yeah, you still do, right?
Yeah.
Customers, especially when you're dealing with big customers.
Yeah. Well, the business itself, is your master.
Right.
You can't just, you can go leave if you want and your business will fail. And
right. Yeah, you can put it on autopilot.
Yeah.
Right. Be like, oh, unless you built it up to a level
until you get to a certain point.
Right. Then you have those decision makers and everybody knows how it all works.
Yeah. I always, that for a small business. And at the end of the day, Global CTI is a small business, an SMB, you live and drink your business.
Right. It has to become, like we talked about in the groups, it's like another kid, right?
It is.
You worry about it all the time. You wonder if you're giving it what it needs to continue along, right? And then we're all faced with at some point we got to let it go, whether that's selling to somebody else or turning it over, like we've seen a couple of our buddies do, where it's like time to let go of the reins. And
it's it's hard to when you're 30 something years old and you're first getting started, you got energy,
sometimes
to give away, right? But when then you get in your 40s and you're still going. Then I'm in my late 50s now,
right?
And you get tired. So how do you keep re-energizing? You asked that question early. How do you keep re-energizing yourself to keep this going?
Because I think it is energy more than anything. Because it takes that energy too. They say like business comes down to money, resources, but it's the energy to refill your tank.
I agree. Some of it, and to me, what I found is young people.
Right.
If you, and it's, and it's not, 50-year-olds and 20-year-olds don't always have they're not always on the same plane, right? Or whatever. But man, if you can find some good young people in your business, once you've kind of established like we are, that they can give you energy. That's what I've found. And they give the business energy.
Right. And what I hear in a couple of the different groups I run is like, sometimes it's, if the old guard understands that, hey, let's listen and grow. But I think that's a cultural piece too.
That's a cultural piece. And I see it in my deal.
You let the old guys,
the old grumpy guys who, hey, this is the way it's always been done, and this way we're going to keep doing it.
This is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It's like the failures you see, right? Like some of the epic failures like Blockbuster and some of these companies that just were on top of the world and didn't think digital would ever impact them. Didn't think. I think now with AI, you're seeing it again.
And that's, that's one thing I think we have done pretty good at Global is we've tried to keep reinventing ourselves a little bit, adding solutions.
Yeah. And I think as being that owner, and hopefully your people are looking out too, like, hey, this could be a potential threat if this technology comes in. So I think it's one of the missing pieces of business ownership is paying attention to the world. Like what's out there that's we don't even see coming yet, or it's barely starting to show up. And we're saying, I don't think that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
I was talking to a local therapist that owns another business, and I was like, hey, what are you guys going to do about venture capital? Like venture capital's here. They're starting to buy up stuff. They're coming into our market. What's your guys' plan? Nah, we've seen competitors come and go before. We don't think we need to. I was like, all right. Well, this is a whole different game.
I talk to at least one a quarter.
I know.
Just to understand what's going on out there.
Right.
I don't have any plans on doing it, but you never know.
Yeah. But at least know the game. And we've gone through it a couple of times where it's like, I just wanted to understand and like, how are they viewing this thing?
Yeah. And if you want to grow, how do they help you grow?
Right.
Maybe you do want to grow, expand out of your area.
And is that what needs to happen? Is it a partnership? Do you look at it as that, or
yeah,
you turn it over?
And how do you define what are the key thing I think is what are the end goals for what if you do that, because it'll fail if you don't define that at the beginning.
So what do you see out there? Because you're in the tech world, right? Like AI, I think is going to be a game changer. I don't think we even understand what yet the implications, right? Or at least from my level, from your level as a tech guy, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to evolve at a rate that, we think technology evolves fast
now.
Today. It's going to, all these different technologies that have come along, the evolution of them just accelerates at a speed that, we've never seen before. So AI is going to do the same thing. I think for me, for AI, the last few years has been more about the processing piece of it, the power, the processing.
Right.
Now that stuff is kind of getting in place or partially in place, or maybe in some cases all the way in place. The big thing is, okay, how do businesses make money off of this now?
Right.
So what are the applications that are going to use AI to help businesses, make more money at the end of the day, grow, be more efficient, whatever that is.
Right.
So I think that's the step we're starting to see right now.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything. It's that innovator adopter curve, which is just a bell curve, right? There's always the front edge people that are like, when AI first comes out, we're just all into it, right? Yeah. And then you get the early adopters. Eventually, and I don't even think we're into the early mass yet. There's early mass, then there's late mass, and then there's the laggards that 20 years from now will be saying, oh, I don't think that AI is going to work.
And a lot of times we don't even realize that it's happened until it's happened.
Right.
Right. You look back and say, wow,
that thing was coming up.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you got to look, is like, what is on that cutting edge of that's happening out there, that let's keep an eye on it and see where this thing goes.
Yeah. So in my world, like the voice world and cybersecurity, that kind of stuff, AI is already starting to play a role in trying to predict things, or from a collaboration standpoint, if from a customer service or customer experience, when you got a person answering a call and the AI system is analyzing the tone and the words being used by that person to determine, is this person pissed off? Are they happy? And then it's giving you things to say to that person based on what their mood is.
Oh, so there's a decision tree already being built.
It's being built live based on the discussion that's going on.
And I think that's the crazy part that I still wrap my head around, is the more data and information that goes into it, the stronger it gets.
And it just gets smarter over time.
Right. That's the scary part.
That which is the scary part.
Where's this thing going?
Ask Arnold.
Yeah, exactly. Well, awesome, man. I appreciate you coming and doing this.
All right, man.
We'll I'm gonna see you soon. So
we'll be together soon.
Yeah, it'll happen.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
A cigar or anything else?